Welcome to the Natural Health Podcast. We're bringing awareness of sustainable health in the business hustle space. Natural Health Podcast is perfect for the high-performing, business-minded individuals who want to work with their biochemistry to achieve success and optimal health. It's Friday, which means it's time for friends sharing facts about health, business, and overall success. In today's episode, we talk to Antoni Anibonam. I hope I pronounced that right. We'll go into that further. Antoni is the co-founder and CEO of Veri, a food intelligence company that helps people understand their optimal diet to improve the state of their metabolic health. Numbers-wise, Veri raised $4 million in funding to start shipping its glucose sensors and has over 50,000 people on its waiting list. Antoni was also the board member and co-founder of Kuas for nearly 5 years, as well as graphics web designer of Meru Health. An interesting fact is also that they started Veri because of their personal health issues to actually solve their own problems. His girlfriend thinks he's a weirdo because he eats ingredients and not meals. And he's also a wannabe triathlete. Some interesting facts right there. Well, welcome to the Natural Health Podcast.
Thank you, Miela. I'm happy to be here.
Can you explain to me your eating ingredients, not meals? Can we go a little bit into that?
Yes. Like since a very early age, I've been very interested in this space. I've been very interested in the of the biochemistry of human beings and just like understanding, I guess, nutrition and food on a deeper level. So I think like with Veri, actually, my kind of like knowledge has grown so much of the space that I really kind of like avoid certain types of foods and certain types of like sources of foods that are not optimal for my health personally. So what that actually looks like is then, me having a plate of food with like good source of protein with like some avocados like on side, like a small kind of like green mixed salad. So, that there isn't like really like a label that you can give that given food, right? When my girlfriend is from Croatia and she has like a very strong Mediterranean diet with, like with these like very fancy titles and names on every single meal, right? But I think that's what I'm going after by saying the fact that, like I eat ingredients instead of actual meals.
Yeah, I love that. And myself being Croatian, I totally understand where your girlfriend's coming from because our diet, our traditional diet is just home cooked meals for like 3 to 6 hours and they have these fancy names, fancy ingredients, and yeah.
I didn't know that. That was news for me.
Yeah. So I was actually born in Croatia and moved to Australia. Cool. So yeah, so food and diet has had a huge impact in my whole life also. So it's interesting that it's had an impact on yours too. And I love that you actually took that and, decided to make this company. But before we get into that, I wanted to find out a little bit more about you. What have been the key turning points to where you are now? Like what have been the key turning points in your life to be like, you know what, I'm going to open up a company that's going to check people's glucose levels?
That's a great question. Growing up, I was really into sports. I played soccer growing up, and I got injured at the age of 15, and that was a big blow for me. Like I had built my whole life around sports. I had built my whole life around football, essentially, and just kind of like the mental health issues and weight management issues that then followed after me not burning 2,500 calories per day, work like training in the like nights and evenings and mornings, just got my body really like, I got very confused. I started gaining weight. I started having like different kind of issues with my health, and that then pushed me to really like get to know my body a lot more better, just understand, go deeper than just the calories and understand more about food, macronutrients, micronutrients, a lot of these things. So that journey already started at the age of 15 or so, unfortunately, but fortunately. And then, that has then like guided me towards this whole journey. Meeting my co-founder had a very similar kind of like path, being diagnosed with a severe IBD growing up in the United States. Was then like a final push for me obviously to build what we have now built, right? So my co-founder Vern, he is today drug free and has been, with just good nutrition, has been able to reverse an autoimmune disease and a condition which I myself personally find extremely inspiring, and so on. So, you know, like we just like derived all that energy of our misfortune and turned it into our fortune, and here we are trying to do the same to most of the people in the world with their.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. And, you know, unfortunately or fortunately, like you said, injuries, especially in athletes, is a huge unspoken topic, because comes with that, like you said, the weight gain, the depression, the loss of identity, so many things come with it. And the last thing people think about is like, oh, how's that going to affect my glucose? Or, you know, because you continue eating the same as you were eating, but at a young age, you notice that is definitely going to impact you.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. The thing is that with all of the nuances that there is in nutrition, it's really taken us quite a long time to arrive to this point. But now we are really seeing how, like, this whole the biochemistry of humans and like on a hormonal level, how we're so much being we're so much being like driven by our hormones and our like hormonal behavior. And the latest research is starting to show that more and more. So really excited to arrive in this space.
Yeah, 100%. So when did the thought for Very come about? Like, how many years ago, and what was the initial thought about it?
Yeah, this is 2018. So this is a story when we were still living in China, building a previous project together with my co-founder. And, you know, we connected on the note that we had both lost our health when we were growing up. And as I explained earlier, our stories. And we just saw this like huge issue with metabolic health, right? We saw that there's this recent study that came out. This is around 2019 early, from University of Michigan, that showed that 88% of the US population are considered metabolically healthy by the objective criteria on five different parameters that justified metabolic health: blood glucose, triglycerides, HDL cholesterol, blood pressure, and waist circumference. So, you know, from all of these metrics, then we looked at what is the given metric that we can have a very fast and easy to measure and objective way of reflecting to our diets and so on, right? So glucose definitely stands there as this kind of what we call a protagonist almost in the body, when insulin is the director, so to say. So when we saw this link in like how important of a metric glucose is, we started studying it very, very closely. And, you know, like through studying like human metabolism, you very quickly arrive to a conclusion where you see like the facts: 90% of the modern human energy production happens via glucose, right? Like very rarely humans, like today's humans, have the capability of producing energy out of fat, right? Which, for example, like ketogenic diet tackles. So all of these things were things that just like pushed us closer towards unlocking and finding a way of monitoring glucose continuously. So when then CGM started surfacing, we tested out the product ourselves, and we first built basically the product for ourselves. When we tested out Very, we were just mesmerized by the data, right? The data was very powerful. We could start making this connection with our bodies that we hadn't been able to do before. You know, you were able to distinguish the noise out of the signal out of the noise for the first time, right? We had done like elimination diet ourselves for, 5-6 years. And that's the time that it takes to really kind of like test out and then like very subjectively measure how well is like a given meal like metabolized What are like the sensations that I'm like linking with this? But the thing that we saw the big opportunity was that the software was really, really poor. So, you know, the connection between lifestyle habits and this now strong voice our body was sending wasn't matched at all. This software layer on top was mainly built for type 1 diabetics to understand how much insulin needs to be inserted to reach homeostasis, metabolism like homeostasis after meals and after hyperglycemic events. So this was something that, you know, very, very much signaled us that we have a huge opportunity to build something monumental in the health and fitness space. And for the first time, tackle nutrition with a data-driven and just like a way that we can give people feedback on their metabolism so much more quicker. So we just jumped the gun and did it. We left our jobs. I was working for it at the time with Meru Health. That is based on the Bay Area and in Helsinki. They went through Y Combinator, that is one of the leading accelerator programs in the world. And my co-founder Vern was working for Oura, which maybe some of the listeners are familiar with, the sleep ring, as well. Currently, most people are based, at least according to my information, are based in the US, but they are actually from Helsinki, actually from Oulu, Finland, where they've first got started. And yeah, these were kind of like the signals for us to start building and our journey so far.
Yeah, wow, that sounds absolutely amazing. And I love that both of you had, not that I love that both of you had health issues, but I love the fact that, you know, you had those health issues and then it drove you to make something like Very and make something so sophisticated and so absolutely amazing, which we're going to talk about later during the podcast. And I'm so excited to go into more details about the actual technology of it. But before we go in there, I thought I wanted to find out, what does actual success and optimal health look like for you right now? What's optimal health to you?
That's a great question. I think optimal health is better health. I think optimal health is like a place, almost like a feeling or an emotion, where, you know, you just feel that you're on top of the world. And I think that means eating foods that are right for you. That means having a balanced life, sleeping well 8 hours a night, and being very like wholesome in a way. But I don't think optimal health means that you have to say no to everything. Like, you know, I don't think optimal health means that you have to say no to your birthday cake. I think optimal health means that you find a way to enjoy your life, like mentally and physically.
Yeah, I love that. I love that explanation. Say yes to your birthday cake. I love it. So let's go into today's topic, connecting the dots of your blood glucose levels with technology. So before we get into the technology part, let's talk about blood sugar. What is blood glucose and why should we care about it? So a lot of people might be thinking, you know, it's the individuals who have diabetes that should care about our glucose levels and so forth. But why should the average Australian, average human think about blood glucose levels?
Yeah, maybe if I start from the top and explain a bit about this problem. Right. So as I said earlier, 88% of the population are metabolically ill, which means, you know, 288 million people in the United States alone are considered metabolically unhealthy. But it's not just present in the US. The rate of obesity has been rising worldwide since the 80s, as every one of us knows, right? And the unfortunate fact is that every 2 seconds, someone is diagnosed with diabetes, which is a crazy stat. And every 7 seconds, someone dies of diabetes, unfortunately. So we are in the brink of this health crisis, this like metabolic health crisis and pandemic that is facing us. And the thing that is driving this crisis is the fact that the standard Western diet or the standard American diet is steering us to excessive carbohydrate consumption. And this excessive carbohydrate consumption is especially the poor and low quality carbohydrates that are causing us these like that are driving us towards insulin resistance, that is causing weight gain and eventually increasing the amount of people developing type 2 diabetes as an end result. So the problem is that our macronutrition nutrient split is all wrong. And this is what is driving us towards that. And the thing is that a lot of people currently think that this like blood glucose is something that a diabetic should measure. But the thing is that we believe that there is like, well, to say it out loud, that diabetes is just a late phenotype along a wide spectrum of events, of signals that our body is sending us, right? So being metabolically healthy, it's a spectrum, it's a gradient. There is a lot of room and signals that our body sends much more before the disease occurs, right? So us understanding these mechanisms, glucose, how is glucose driving us towards insulin resistance? How are our food choices affecting our glucose, and how that is then having an impact on our capability of secreting insulin is basically what Veri is all about, and why so many people should care about how and what they're eating and how is that affecting their metabolism. And glucose can be basically considered as one of the body's preferred sources of fuel. So the modern human runs mainly on glucose, as I told, like 90% of ATP energy production is done through or comes via glucose. Then what is interesting, which is like a counter, which is like kind of like a counterpart of glucose or hormone that is basically driving the body to homeostasis after we eat certain foods, is insulin. And insulin is an anabolic hormone, which is the main fat storage in the human body. So it tells fat cells to store fat and prevent stored fat from being broken down, right? And the issue with excessive carbohydrate consumption is that when we do that constantly, it's like an engine, right? Your metabolism is like an engine. When you give it the wrong kind of fuel, or like when you kind of like over stress it for a long enough time, you become something that is called insulin resistant. So insulin resistance is when your muscles, fat, and liver don't respond well to insulin anymore, and can't easily take up glucose from your blood, which then results in excess levels of insulin constantly in the bloodstream. This condition is called hyperinsulinemia, which then causes extra or high excessive insulin levels then have a causal role in weight gain and type 2 diabetes. So to summarize all of this, it's basically what like the standard Western and American diet is driving us towards is excessive carbohydrate consumption that comes from low quality refined carbohydrates that are then basically kind of like clogging this engine that our like unique metabolism is, and hence causing us these conditions that just show up later, but not necessarily today.
Yeah, and it's so interesting. It's maybe at the moment your blood glucose may not be pushing you towards the edge of, type 2 diabetes, but it may be going towards that resistance, exactly what you spoke about. So I guess everyone who eats here in Australia, or the standard American diet should actually care about their blood glucose levels to see what effects it has on you. But you spoke about metabolic health and being metabolically healthy. So what does it look like when you're not metabolically healthy? What are some symptoms that people would experience when their metabolic health isn't 100%? You said 88% of, Americans are metabolically ill. So what do they look like? What does their disease or, metabolically ill look like to them?
This study that was conducted with around 8,000, 9,000 people in the US in Chapel Hill and University of Michigan. This seek to find the optimal levels from 5 different parameters, as I explained. So blood glucose, triglycerides, HDL cholesterol, blood pressure, waist circumference. So some of these some of these were outside of the range, and that was considered metabolically ill. But outside of that, what we see a lot of people struggling with our users and with other people that are interested in the space is, glucose levels might be, fasting glucose levels might be very high. Postprandial responses for given meals are very, very high. They're not metabolizing their meals as fast enough. They're not getting back to homeostasis. So what this means, from the outside parameters, having struggles with weight, having very rapid weight gain, having trouble focusing even as well, having trouble focusing, having issues with productivity. Even there's things, there's a lot of research papers coming out of having different skin problems, mental health issues. In some recent studies and some people are talking about Alzheimer's and these other chronic illnesses being kind of a type 3 diabetes, because it's just, this whole mechanism, when it's not working, it can trickle down into very different kind of very struggling conditions all in all. So it can be a lot of different things. To answer from our data, what we are seeing right now, most people that gravitate towards the product are looking for ways to lose weight, find the right kind of foods for them, optimize or kind of stabilize their energy levels, be more productive in work, and so on. So these are some of the main symptoms that people gravitate towards us for very solve.
I love that. I love that you mentioned productivity and focus, because not a lot of people would make the link between glucose levels and productivity and focus. I mean, a lot of the listeners here, they're business professionals, so they want the most to get the best performance, to achieve the most in a small period of time. And I mean, by them having, a white bread sandwich in the morning, or cereal, or having that extra sugar in their coffee, that's going to definitely affect their productivity. But there's a link. It's because of the glucose. Is that right?
Yes, definitely. There's strong links showing the mismatch in productivity in given states and glucose and metabolic health. Obviously, one maybe thing to mention, or an example to give, is that, well, most of us here listening knows the kind of the after lunch crash that a lot of people have. You go and eat something that is very heavy with excessive carbohydrates, refined carbohydrates, low quality carbohydrates, and eating them very often, if you would eat them naked. So one example that I like to give is that ramen, for example. I've found ramen to be very, very poisonous, almost toxic to me in terms of my glucose levels, right? So having a big bowl of ramen and coming back to the office, sitting on your desk and trying to work, it's almost impossible to me, right? I just have this crazy crash, an hour. I just have to, sit down and just clear my thoughts, almost being so tired, right? So this is, for example, a great example of your glucose levels skyrocketing, coming down really hard, and that then causes this this very dramatic change in your body that is then causing you troubles, troubles focusing.
Yeah. So is it the high rise of the blood glucose that makes
High rise
individuals?
and following crash.
Yeah. So it's both points. So you're not just getting that one, you're getting actual 2 points where you're just not feeling yourself. You can't concentrate, you're
Exactly.
feeling fatigued and so forth. So we know from what you said that, certain foods, if you can even go into some certain foods that increase blood sugar. But besides foods, is there anything else that increases blood sugar?
Absolutely, absolutely. There are a lot of things that increase blood sugar. I think there's this document going around. Like I think it's most likely to more to teach diabetics of like the cause and effect of different like lifestyle behaviors. This like leaflet flyer going around. But yeah, like very interesting thing. So maybe a couple to mention that we as well at Very like look very closely is sleep and exercise. So exercise, for example, can have two different, multiple, but two different kind of like directions where it can take your glucose. So if you do an aerobic exercise, your glucose is most likely going to drop. But when you do an anaerobic exercise, your glucose is most likely to rise. And this rise of glucose in an anaerobic exercise is not unnatural. It's actually like very natural. So if you think about an aerobic exercise, when you start lifting like very heavy weights, what basically happens is that your body needs that extra energy very fast. And then, your body just releases your body releases more glucose to the bloodstream in order for your muscles to lift those weights. Doing an aerobic exercise, then when you have that given energy in your body or like floating already, it doesn't like have to do that dramatic of a shift of like raising your blood sugar very rapidly, but it can actually like just like dispense it like much more steadily. So that would then like rise your glucose because you're constantly, of course, burning that energy in your body. So these are some of the interesting things that happen through exercise.
So with individuals who are weightlifters, are they running
Yes.
a risk of having issues with their blood glucose?
I wouldn't say so. I think everything kind of like everything. There's like an extremist fan in everything, right? So if you like constantly do that, maybe. But then again, I think it's very natural response that your body is giving. If you look at like evolutionary, situations, like if you look at this like fight or flight responses, you kind of like you see that the body is accustomed to do that, right? Like when you have this sudden need to fly or fight, your body is basically your cortisol levels rise. That is a signal to your body. Now we need more energy in our muscles so that we can run away from this, this given situation or fight if we decide to do so. So I think it's a very natural response for the human to have that kind of like way to really quickly tap into reserves of energy in our bodies. So it's I would say it's very normal, but there's definitely like more papers coming out like constantly from this, and it's still pretty tough to say.
Yeah, I'd love to look into that a little bit more because that's so interesting. Because a
Yeah.
lot of individuals, who weight lift or used to lift weights later on, they do develop either a bit of obesity or even sometimes type 2 diabetes. And I wonder where that's coming from. But moving away from that, so you mentioned exercise can decrease or increase your blood sugar levels. Is there anything else that's something that we wouldn't
Yeah.
have thought about that would increase our blood sugar levels?
Yeah, one thing that has a huge impact is sleep as well, right? So, for example, like in users' data and in my own data, I'm seeing this like huge response when me personally, like having a poor night's sleep is giving me like way higher scores on each and every meal that I'm having in a given day, right? And my average glucose is much more higher. The reason of this is, well, it's complex, but one thing that is to mention there is the fact that poor sleep causes like extra stress, and extra stress is basically more cortisol to your body. What cortisol does is cortisol raises your blood sugar levels. And when like the modern society is like very altered to this constant stress, again, kind of like borrowing from the evolutionary science side, when we have this like very like flight or flight situations, we are basically secreting cortisol in our bodies to rise our glucose levels, and through that like fuel ourselves to fight or flight. But this like given environment that we are currently living in, where people are like constantly stressed out, that is basically keeping cortisol levels constantly higher, and that is then causing us like more or raised levels of blood sugar. So to tie in like 2 points here, stress is as well visible in blood sugar levels, raising your blood sugar. Sleep is as well visible in blood sugar levels, either, well, if you sleep well, raising it, lowering it; if you sleep poorly, raising it. So I have like personal like great stories about both, but we can dive into them later.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned stress, because individuals, that are running their own business or business professionals, I mean, a deadline or a task or a client needs and running around, they are running on cortisol. Yeah. And most of the time they don't eat until dinner, or they might just snack on a few things or forget about even eating. Not that fasting isn't a good thing, but that's a different story. But essentially the thing is they're thinking their heads they're not eating, so the blood sugar level's okay. But what you're saying is because they're stressed out, their blood sugar level may be through the roof.
Exactly. I have an example here, like a good example. So me personally, when we were starting Very, me and my co-founder, we were wearing, of course, the sensor constantly as we are today. It's amazing insights to us, like us both and the whole company, like everyone is wearing that here at the office. We had an interview with Y Combinator, so a very kind of famous accelerator. But we were interviewed by them, and that was the first time that we were there, interviewed by them. And we had adored like their work, we had followed their work. That's kind of like our school of entrepreneurship, right? And we met some of the people that we just checked on, like, looked at videos on YouTube, and, we met them on person. And I remember us like sitting outside of the meeting room, and, of course we knew this like linked with stress and blood sugar. And I think I asked like my co-founder, hey, scan your Essential to see like what your glucose looks like. And he was like off the roof. I think he was at like 180 milligrams per deciliter glucose levels at the time, just prior to going to the meeting. I was like, wow, like we need to show this to these guys. Like this is actually real, right? So that was like an amazing insight, a story where we really discovered how stress really and cortisol has an impact in blood sugar.
I know we read all these things and we read all these articles and it says it, but when you can actually see it yourself.
So different when you see it, right? It's like seeing is believing. And when you see it, it's just like on a different level. It's like this like lost connection that you're having with your body, which feels amazing.
Yeah, I love that. And you did mention also sleep. I always say to individuals that talk to me about weight loss, they go, Mahela, how could I lose weight? I'm like, sleep it off. And they look at me confused and they're just so confused. I'm like, you want to lose weight? Sleep it off. And they're like just so confused. I'm like, you need to sleep well. And it goes exactly with what you said. If we're not sleeping well, our blood glucose is all over the place. No matter if we end up eating healthy or not, our blood glucose is just going to go through the roof with that little roller coaster that it does.
Exactly.
Wonderful. So in regards to mental health, what would you say glucose, what type of impact would your blood sugar levels have on individuals' mental health? Because as we know at the moment, there's so many things happening and we understand that stress raises your blood sugar level. I mean, anxiety and depression, is there a link that you know of in regards to blood glucose levels and mental health?
Yeah, I think stress is at least like the biggest kind of like indicator there, right? Like being constantly stressed, that having like an impact to your blood sugar levels constantly. I think that's like a pretty clear, that's something that everyone agrees in this space that is like definitely there. So yeah, I think that's kind of like a very strong link there.
100%. So let's go in and talk about these continuous glucose monitors. A lot of people are a bit confused. What is it? What does it look like? Because, old diabetics or even current diabetics, they're used to pricking their finger. They put that plug on a little pad thingy and it goes through and it gives them a number. And then they can see what their glucose levels are. And these are for type 1, type 2 diabetics. It's not really available for the average individual who's not classified to be diabetic here in Australia. So what is a continuous glucose monitor and how does it work? Tell us all about it.
Yeah, absolutely. So a continuous glucose monitor, or a CGM, is a sensor that tracks glucose and is a very efficient way of tracking it. So in the comfort of your home, you can insert the sensor with an applicator. It takes 30 seconds, does not hurt at all, and it's painless. And it's an extremely rapid source of feedback. It gives 5 minutes. Every 5 minutes, it gives us basically like a sample reading of your glucose levels, which we can then combine with different insights in terms of like food, exercise, and sleep on the very app. So continuous glucose monitoring, essentially, it connects people with their own biological info real time through a filament that is coated with this like very like sophisticated enzyme code that is basically reading your glucose levels from your interstitial fluid, and through that, combined with our application, then guiding our users to interpret the data.
So you get an applicator, as my understanding. You put it on your tricep, and yes. then you scan with your phone, an app that you have. You scan it with your phone, so you don't really need anything else, just your phone and the applicator and putting the sensor on.
Exactly. Each sensor lasts for 14 days. So every 14 days, the sensor is replaceable, and in just going to the very app, pressing scan, you can scan the sensor like wanding and like an Apple Pay feature, almost, of paying your groceries or paying for your coffee. So very, very easy to use, very easy to understand use case of getting continuous stream of glucose data.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, you would have had so much fun the first time you got it and just ate so much stuff that was out of this world, and just scanning it. Is there any interesting stories that you've got to share? Like, is there something that you thought would just raise your blood sugar like crazy and it didn't, or something else? I know you said Raymond gave you a huge blood glucose spike earlier, but you would just have a ball and have so much fun just scanning and experimenting on yourself, right?
Absolutely. No, I had such a good time. I still do today. But maybe one thing that was really impactful for me, like an own example, is a banana. So there was this like ad campaign going on when I was growing up in Finland that was done by Gainomax, that is a Swedish like supplement company. And they have this very successful advertising on bananas are for monkeys, drink Gainomax after workouts. So, but despite that, I always ate bananas. Like I just like loved bananas. I thought that they were really pretty healthy and good for me, right? But shortly after I started using a CGM, I saw my glucose explode to a bit below 200 millimoles per liter per deciliter, like 200 milligrams per deciliter after eating bananas. And to give kind of like a reference of what 200 means, glucose levels between 70 to 120 approximately for 90% of the day are considered normal. Mean like post-meal glucose peaks ranging from 90 to 150 is considered normal. So it's 50 points above the threshold that is considered normal. And that was like a point for me. I was like, I've like lived a lie my whole life, right? So that was like a really interesting insight for me personally. And this is not to say that bananas are bad for everyone. Actually, bananas are, there's this like very big like personalization like type of study. They measured like blood glucose levels and responses to different foods amongst twins in King's College, I think, and they saw like crazy differences between even like identical twins because of their microbiome makeup. So this actually means that bananas are not poor source of nutrition for everyone. But on my like microbiomal makeup, it is actually like not considered optimal. But I still do eat bananas, but I just like combine them with different sources of fat, like peanut butter. I do post-meal walks after I eat something with bananas, and I don't eat them necessarily like that much anymore. But I think that's kind of like how I see health as well, and how I see Veri as well for a lot of people. It's not going to be, you canceling everything that you enjoy in life. It's actually you understanding what kind of responses a certain food having, and how can I have an effect with things outside, sleeping well, having a post-meal walk that are shown to have an have an amazing impact on your blood sugar levels immediately. Because what you're basically doing, you're giving your food energy, and you're instantly consuming that energy so that it like stabilizes much more quicker and better, right? So all of these like intricacies and all of these like insights are very vital for us to tackle this metabolic health crisis, like in my honest opinion. These are some of the insights that I have.
It's so important to have individual health, like what you said. Like you having a banana and someone else having a banana might have different thing, and this is why it's beneficial to analyze yourself. But during the time that you were talking, you said a key word which I wanted to talk about and bring up is post-meal walking. Can you explain that? Because that is a huge thing at the moment, and there's research backing it up. But can you explain to the audience what you mean by that?
Yeah, with a post-meal workout or like post-meal walking, I mean the fact that you would have a given meal, and after that you would take a brisk 20-minute walk. This has shown, like in our data set, we are seeing like amazing like impact of that, and there's like research backing that up as well. And I like briefly explained the physiology like behind, right? So you're basically giving your body energy, you're giving your body glucose, and you are instantly starting to use that energy that is in your bloodstream. You're basically fueling that to your muscles, because your muscles are shouting, hey, we need energy to make movement. Right? So you're basically like curbing the spike basically with such an action after a given meal.
I love that. And so if anyone got anything out of this podcast, it's have your birthday cake, but make sure you walk after it.
Exactly. I love that you put that together, but exactly that, right? Like anything taking away anything from here is definitely, I feel that, you need to live a wholesome life. You need to enjoy life. But knowing all of these things, like knowledge is power, and knowledge helps you to then, combat these things, and look for, I think, better choices, but not necessarily like, optimal superhuman choices.
I love that.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask one more question before we wrap it up. Is actually two more questions. Is one of them, what would be, I know we spoke about the post walk after eating helps you decrease your blood sugar levels quicker than if you didn't. Is there anything else, such as supplements, such as certain foods, such as anything that or have done research on that assists with that, that huge spike and that huge crash?
Awesome. That's an awesome question. There's a couple of food ingredients actually that have been shown that have a huge impact in your post-meal glucose responses. One is that apple cider vinegar. So a lot of people, especially like Mediterranean diet, has like apple cider vinegar. Maybe Mihaela, you're familiar with apple cider vinegar in every single salad, right? Like I love that. When I met my girlfriend, still, starting to work on Veri, and I already knew about all of these things, but, she would make a salad and I would have that salad. I was like, is there apple cider vinegar in this? And she's like, yeah. So I'm like,
it's drenched in it. It's drenched in it. There's no salad. It's exactly. Like, can I have some salad with that apple cider vinegar?
Yeah. But apple cider vinegar has been shown to be very effective in terms of lowering blood glucose levels, and as well like curbing those spikes. So that's amazing. One thing as well is cinnamon. So cinnamon has a similar effect. So these are a couple of meals or a couple of ingredients basically that have this kind of an impact. Here again, the ingredients thought, right? Like I eat ingredients. So I drink an apple cider vinegar shot every morning to curb kind of like all of my glucose spikes and make my glucose as stable as possible. That's kind of like a couple of things that would help.
I love that. I love the little things that you can do. And cinnamon, there is so much research on cinnamon in regards
Yeah.
to blood sugar levels. It's absolutely crazy. You might just think, oh, what cinnamon in my like apple pie cake or whatever you put cinnamon on, but it just assists dramatically with individuals with diabetes and their blood sugar levels. The research is out there. That's absolutely amazing.
Exactly.
Apple cider vinegar and cinnamon. I guess you wouldn't really mix the two. It wouldn't really taste nice, but I guess you eat things for ingredients, so you may have a bit of cinnamon in your apple cider vinegar.
Yeah. I haven't yet gone that far mixing cinnamon with apple cider vinegar in the morning, but maybe I'll test it out tomorrow.
Yeah, that might be the newest thing to, curb your blood sugar levels. So before we end it, I wanted to know, what do you think the role is of technology in healthcare? Technology, one very being, technology and assisting with healthcare. Where do you think the future is going to go with this?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I think technology has a huge role in the future of healthcare. I think we're having like so many ways of like tapping into this like very interesting and very crucial metrics in the human body. These like more a lot more or a lot less superficial metrics inside what's happening and how this like huge chemistry set is running, right? Things like heart rate and so on, they are amazing, but they're very superficial. They're not like explaining the cause and effect necessarily on a lot of things that are happening inside of our bodies, which we haven't had an access like earlier, right? So I think this movement will start, will keep on building, and there will be so many more things as well to measure and to understand. And I think I think it holds a huge potential. I think the big risk is that how do you design such tools? And I think the developers need to take a huge responsibility on not driving people crazy. That is something that I am afraid about, and we are very cautious here at Very. And I think that's as well what's driving us to think that information can be knowledge, or information can like build up more frustration. And I think like a certain amount of information and just kind of like certain way of building tools and things is going to be power and be less of the frustration, the sadness, the like reaching the kind of like almost like a semi-god level of humanity, right? Which I think a lot of the demographics building these tools are representing, which I think is a huge like threat to the future.
Yeah, I mean, we could sit here for hours and talk about that. That is an absolutely huge topic, and I have so much to say in regards to it. But we are coming to the end, and I thought if we can just say maybe 3 practical tips that the audience can incorporate, I guess, to control or to, have healthy metabolic health, be considered metabolically healthy. What would be some like 2-3 practical tips that you would tell to the audience?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first and foremost, just understanding some of the meals, some of the carbohydrates and sources of carbohydrates, especially, and foods that you're eating on this level of understanding of, are they doing good for my metabolic health is crucial, right? With like easy things like post-meal walks, with good sleep, with like decent amount of exercise per week, you can already have a huge impact to your glucose levels. So, and to your hence your metabolic health. So maybe to recap, try and decrease the amount of low quality carbohydrates and excessive indulgence in low quality carbohydrates. So eat your birthday cake, test out a few different, and then, find the best one and stick with that next birthday. Then, having post-meal walks after meals, after especially like very heavy meals. So, go for a lunch a bit further down the city, have a lunch, and then walk back to the office. And then, for it, remember to have that 8 hours of sleep. That has a tremendous impact in your metabolic health.
I love it. And there's such simple tools that you just mentioned that anyone can just add into their life, into their routine. It's not anything complicated where you have to work something out and do this for 35 minutes every day. It's just simple. Be wary of low quality carbohydrates, reduce them, make sure you're sleeping well, and then, try and go for a walk after heavy meals. I love them. They're just absolutely simple. So look, thank you so much for joining me on a Natural Health Podcast. But before we let you go, I wanted to find out, what's your little health hack that you may do every day or once a week that gets you closer to optimal health every single day? What would be one or two of those that you would do?
Well, the one I mentioned already, having that apple cider vinegar shot in the morning just starts my day right. I try to stay very, very active. I try to stay very active all throughout the week. So I used to train for triathlons and used to do a lot of that, but now transitioned a bit more towards just moving for the fun of it, just enjoying movement. I think thinking occurs so nicely when you just move. So I think one thing, maybe this tip that I would give, which I've experienced lately, is that if you think exercise is performance most of the time, you're most likely doing it wrong. So exercise can be fun, can be, you enjoying yourself, you just combining exercise and movement to your lifestyle. So anywhere I go, I walk, or I do a bike session. I want to see the nature, I bike somewhere further down, right? So all of these have very much transitioned my kind of view on activity. And I think it's brought me overall better well-being and happiness.
I love that, changing your view on exercise. Absolutely love it. Thank you so much for joining us in the Natural Health Podcast. But before we go, is there anywhere that anyone would be able to access Very right now? Is there a waiting list? If someone's I want to go and buy that right now, how do they go about it and where can they access it?
There's a waiting list that we currently have. I think we're around 80,000 people on the waiting list, but we're dispensing the product steadily. I will provide, or you've been provided with a code to let people access the product and get 25% off. So through that link, they'll get direct access to it. So definitely try it out and join our community. We have a community of 1,000 people on one single platform talking about all of their discoveries, and it's amazing. So would love to have all of the listeners join in, chime in, and learn more about the metabolic health.
Yeah, and share their little meals and share what meal just spikes it, what meal doesn't. Get joining and share that with them. Well, thank you so much for joining us on the Natural Health Podcast. I really appreciate your time and your knowledge about glucose and all things. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mihaela.
You're welcome. Remember, the missing link between failure and success is your health. The content and information provided here is opinion of Mihaela Raguz and is for information purposes only and does not constitute medical advice. It is not intended to provide medical advice or take the place of medical advice or any current treatment you're undertaking. Consult your own medical professionals for any medical issues that you may be having. This entire disclaimer also applies to any guests or contributors to the Natural Health Podcast. It is advised that you consult your doctor or healthcare professional in relation to any health concerns you may be having. Mihaela Raguz does not take responsibility for any health consequences which occur from a person listening, viewing, or reading this content. And in no circumstances shall the Natural Health Podcast, Mihaela Raguz, any guests or contributors to the Natural Health Podcast, or any employees, associates, or affiliates of Mihaela Raguz be responsible for damages arising from the information provided on the Natural Health Podcast. By listening to this podcast, you agree not to use this podcast as medical advice to treat any medical conditions in either yourself or others. Please note, if you're taking prescription, do not stop your medication or start a new protocol, including but not limited to supplements, diet, lifestyle changes without consulting a doctor or healthcare professional. If you or any person has a medical concern, you should consult with your healthcare provider or seek other professional medical advice. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something that you have read or heard on the Natural Health Podcast or in any linked materials. If you think you may have a medical emergency, call your doctor or emergency services immediately. Neither Mihaela Raguz nor the publisher of this content takes responsibility for the possible health consequences of any person or persons reading or listening or following the information in educational content.